Hello, everybody. Welcome to Round the Horn. You probably recognize the music of Bruce Springsteen in the background. Tonight's guest is Howie Chaz. They call him the warden of the Facebook group called the Spring Nuts. Hello, Howie. How are you?
Hello, Lee. How are you?
We're good. We're good. We could be better, but
I
it
hear you.
doesn't get much worse than this. Well, we'd like to welcome you to the show. It's called Round the Horn, where I talk to my music friends about baseball. So, first of all, let's start off with a little bio of you so we can tell people who you are.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Lee, for even considering me to bring me on your show. You know how I feel about you as a person and what you've done with us and musically. Baseball, I'm going to try. So I am originally from Brooklyn, New York, and I have recently moved up to Mount Kisco, Westchester, because I recently got married to Julie Chaz now, who is my partner in, as you know very well, of our Springsteen fan group, Spring Nuts. It's a worldwide fan group that started in 2015 and started with a couple hundred members, and lo and behold, we're up to close to almost 7,000 at this point. So,
Wow.
great ride, big Springsteen fans, and yeah, that's the story.
It's amazing the kind of people we've got in this group, and you started it all. They call you the warden.
Yeah, a lot of inmates in there, so
That's right.
I'm an inmate myself by this point, but it's okay.
Yeah, okay. So, being brought up in Brooklyn, um, who are your favorite teams?
Well, I grew up as a Yankee fan. My father is a diehard Yankee fan.
Okay.
He's, he was, he is, but uh, he was a big fan of Whitey Ford. That was his guy. And it's funny because he was such a big fan during his, kid days, and he met my mother, and just as a funny point is that when I ended up being born on Whitey Ford's birthday.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was a big thing for him, and just by and to God,
Yeah,
he may have prayed for that, but I was born on Whitey Ford's birthday, but that was his main guy, and but always a diehard Yankee fan with Mickey Mantle and Gehrig, and the whole.
sure, sure. Did you play as a kid?
Yes, I played a lot. I used to play third base. I played, you know, every every chance I got. It's half my, I think most of my childhood, other than music, I was down at the park playing ball all the time, especially baseball.
Right, right. That's great. You bring up third base. I have I do instruction every once in a while for kids, and I always tell them that they should be actually trying to learn different positions so they'll become more valuable.
Hmm.
So I bring up a story about a particular third baseman who actually started his career as a second baseman. And this whole story was told to me by his manager at that point in time I guess it was in the California League. He was a minor league player. So anyway, to make a long story short, the uh, the manager goes to the player and says, "We got to start working you out at third base." And the father gets involved, as they usually do sometimes when there's changes. And they said, "You know, you're going to ruin this kid. He's been an all-star at second base. If you put him at third base, he's going to fail, and then you're going to cut him and everything. It's like, he's got no chance to make it as a third baseman. He's been a second baseman all his life." Well, it turns out the player was Greg Nettles.
Really, that was the team that I followed the most as a kid. I mean, that was my childhood. It was Chambliss, Bucky Dent, Willie Randolph,
Really.
Nettles. Yeah, those were, and even Munson. Munson, and Guidry. Those, that was a team that, as a kid, I was enamored with.
Even from Brooklyn?
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
that get you
That's
thrown out of Brooklyn eventually if you're not a
well,
Dodger fan?
it was. I
Or
was never even like introduced to it. You know what I mean? My whole family was Yankee fans. My uncle, my father's brothers, like, you know, I mean, rabid Yankee fans. I have a hard time sometimes watching games with them to this day because, like they start from pitch one, and if it's like first pitch is a ball, and like, oh my god, I don't see it. I'm like, this is the first pitch. We got 9 innings to go. We're gonna do this now. So they're really, really into it.
Oh, that's great. Most people don't know when the Mets finally were, sort of given birth, that it was to really replace two teams that had already left New York. The New York Giants, who moved
Right.
to become the San Francisco
The
Giants,
Dodgers.
and the Dodgers, who went to Los Angeles. And the reason why the Mets colors are blue and orange is that it's the blue from the Brooklyn Dodgers and the orange from the New York Giants.
See that? I didn't know.
Yep. And that was really the real name for the Mets is actually the Metropolitans.
Mm-hmm.
So when they first were as a young team, they were called the Metropolitans, and of course it got to be shortened to be the Mets. But actually, at the same time, you had the Jets in New York.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Nets as a basketball
Right.
team, right? So there it was. These new teams come out of the blue. And,
Well, the funny thing is that Julie, my wife, she's a rabid Met fan. Rabid. Okay, much more because she's really into baseball, and since I've married her, I've been to more Met games than I've been to Yankee.
Wow.
And
I kind of thought that was the case, and I think
yeah.
I've seen her. I've seen pictures of you guys at Shea Stadium.
Oh yeah.
City Field.
City Field. Yeah. So she, she was, legitimately concerned because Yankees, Mets, and how we're gonna do this and whatever. But my nephews, my brother-in-law, they're also Met fans, and I root for the Mets, when they're not playing the Yankees, and if the Yankees are not involved in their stuff, I root for the Mets. And so, so as we got married, we watched a lot of the Met games, which is fine, and I root for them, like I said. But then there was one time when we were watching a Mets versus Yankees, and I don't remember who was on the mound, but the Mets were up at bat, and then whoever was pitching that day, he just threw a strike, and just out of habit, I didn't even know I was doing it. I just did it out of habit. I would have done it if anybody was on the mound. They went strike three. And Julie turned around and she looked at me, really?
Okay.
So I said, okay.
Discord.
Right. So I said, okay, this is the deal. We'll watch any game you want, but we're not watching Yankees versus Mets because that's not going to work out for us.
Well, I was born in Jersey City, and so my family were avid, Yankee fans, although my father was a Giants fan, New York Giants fan. And my grandfather was born in Poland, and so he never got a chance to play ball, but he became, when the Mets first started, an avid Mets fan. And even I remember him taking the radio into one of the spare bedrooms at their house to listen to the away games in California, so he wouldn't interrupt my grandmother's sleep. And back then, it was like there was Seaver and Kranepool and those guys, but he being Polish thought Ron Swoboda was Polak.
Okay.
So every player that was on the Mets at that time, if they had a name that was close to being Polish,
right,
they absolutely were Polish. Swoboda in particular. But let's go back to music for a minute or two. How'd you get involved, doing being a Bruce fan, actually?
Well, same uncle that was the rabid Yankee fan. He was a big Springsteen fan, and I would say I was about it was in '81, so I'm thinking that I was 13, and Hungry Heart was on the radio, and I sort of caught on to it. I was a big Who fan before that. I
Right.
used to love the Who. And then I was mentioning to my uncle, that was a great song, Hungry Heart. He's like, no, put that stuff away. He gives me, yeah, listen to this. He gives me Born to Run.
Okay.
And, and I think the first song that got to me was Backstreets, because it was definitely, it was almost like he was writing about what I was doing. I lived in the park. That's what I did. I came home from school and I was in the park every night. That's where I spent my thing. I had my friend, and later on, I moved somewhere else. So the story was just there. And like everybody else, you start getting into his music. You feel like he's writing for you. Then you go see him, and my uncle took me to my first Bruce show at Giant Stadium, and that was the end of that. So, I was completely hooked, and yeah, so I was a big fan. I was part of another group, calling all Springsteen fans, and I was, getting making friends through that group, and then, after a while, I actually met Julie through that group.
Okay.
And I was, saying, what, I write these blogs every morning, and I was writing all these things, and people were really getting into it, and I was getting a lot of great feedback from it. And in one of my posts, I wrote, and the crowd went spring nuts. And meanwhile, my whole post was pretty, like, trying to be pretty deep and profound.
Right.
But for some reason, the only thing they picked up on was spring nuts. So they were like, that's great, this, that, whatever. And I used it a couple more times, throughout the weeks. And, it was really something they caught on to. And then I said, you know what? I asked Julie, well, maybe I should start my own thing and see where it goes and whatever. And we did, and we started with a couple hundred people, and then it just took on a life of its own. And, I'm, really proud of it. Thank God, the way it's gone. We've all met some great, great friends, that have been with us to today. And we, as we have the Serenade that, was a huge success. And you do our Serenades every year, and you're, a big staple of this thing now. And
It's a great community of people.
people coming from literally around the world, for, to be part of that. And
That's the amazing part about the whole thing. They'll travel
yeah,
from
I
all
mean, that,
parts of the world.
we would, like, we did a consensus. I had someone look at all the, tickets, and where are they coming from? And they were coming from, literally, there was 14 different countries, 28 different states, and I think it was like 40 something different cities and something. It was ridiculous. I mean, I couldn't believe it. A lot of pressure because they're coming all the way from all over. You got to deliver.
Sure,
But,
sure.
as you've been there, thank God we've always delivered, and everyone always has a great time. It's great that
It's
Bruce and the
amazing.
band know it too, and they're, they, like you saw in the last virtual Serenade, because we had to, we unfortunately we couldn't have the physical one because of COVID.
Sure.
And then it's just amazing how when I reached out to the E Street Band, to sort of, chime in on this thing, and they were all for it. And it was a great feeling knowing that they know what we're doing, they know who the group was, and, that we have a good reputation with them.
I tell people the story of the last one that we had at the Stone Pony. And when I tell them that I played Springsteen songs for 6.5 hours, and people didn't get off the dance floor the whole time. The
You
only
could have went
time there
another
was
6
a break
hours.
was when there was, the little trivia contest. And it was a good thing we had that, because, I mean, everybody's got to go to the bathroom sooner or later.
Yeah, well, you would think.
Or grab a bite to eat or something. But it's amazing how many people come and how long they stay, and nobody wants to leave.
Nope. It's even for me. I say it all the time. It's not. I feel that way too. It's not because it's my event or whatever. It's a feeling of. In some ways, it's better than the Springsteen concert. I know he's not there and everything, but it's just the camaraderie. You see it. You see how everyone is so happy to be with everybody. We do it for charity. all around, it's just a, especially today, like in today's world, there's so much craziness going on, and people have their own stuff going on in their private life, and they need a chance to breathe. They need a chance to get away from all that, and that's why people don't want to leave.
Right.
And the music is amazing. And I don't, even for me, I don't even realize, it doesn't feel like 6 hours. It really doesn't.
It goes
The
pretty
music's so
fast.
great,
Yeah.
and you don't want it to end. You
No.
don't want it to end. And but listen, God willing, this thing goes away and we can get back to it. And I think, this is going to be something that we appreciate a lot more, God willing, the next time around,
Right, sure.
knowing what we lost, this year.
Well, Bruce is a big Yankee fan as well, too. And,
That's another reason why to love him.
yeah, right. And the nickname Scooter, actually. And I said to him one time when we were playing softball against them, and I said, Scooter plays short. How come you're at second? So he laughed.
Does he play second base?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I'll tell you a funny story. And I sort of mark this as an occasion where, when somebody recognizes you for whatever and you sort of get a little respect from them. I think that the time that I started, Bruce recognized me or gave me some sort of respect was in the first time he was at bat. I was playing sort of like short and center field. They played regular softball rules. And I made a diving catch.
Oh, wow.
Knocked him up a double.
You robbed Bruce Springsteen of a double.
Yes. So
no wonder he didn't come up to the serenade.
Yeah. So as we passed each other as we were coming in and he was going out to his position, sort of, yeah, I know who you are.
Wow, that's good stuff.
Well, he used to come to the club and he'd come up to the DJ booth and he'd be looking through records and stuff. Or there was one time, and I tell this story often because it's only in particular the voice that you have to use. When he would come in one time and he says, "Hey, Lee, I want to hear the Wanderer." I can't do the voice as well as some other
No,
people.
you did it pretty good.
Yeah, but, he would come up and, you got to play what he wants to play. But then there was one time when he comes in and it was on a Monday night. And usually Mondays back then, there was a band called NRG, and it was like a new wave dance band. So he comes in and he says, "How about we try this on the people? Let's see what they think about it." So he hands me a 45 and we put it on. And it was the first time Dancing in the Dark ever got played.
Really?
Yeah. So he's looking and trying to gauge the reaction of everybody. And of course, it's first time and people are looking up at me and him. And, it's in that groove from, what's going on there in the 80s. So, you had to, and then I start thinking, that there's no Clarence in this song until the absolute very end. So after that, and in fact, I think that at that point in time, there was no Clarence whatsoever on the record. He took the record back because it was a test pressing, and I think they remastered it so we get Clarence at the end.
Was this at the Pony, you're saying?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's like, okay, you can gauge the crowd's general reaction by trying it out on them. So it was an interesting night. But there were a lot of times he'd come up and he'd be looking through records or CDs back, when we started using CDs and started, looking at the collection and wondering, what can we hear next?
Yeah, he's a fan like everybody else, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great musical knowledge. But let's get back to baseball. As you mentioned, Whitey Ford, it turns out that we did an interview earlier week ago with Ed Randall. And I don't know if you know who Ed is. Ed has a radio show on Saturday mornings on WFAN in New York.
Okay.
And he's also on Sirius Radio. Back in his early days, he tells the story when he was in Utica, New York. As an announcer doing minor league baseball, At the time he was a Red Sox affiliate. The Red Sox signed Whitey Ford's son, Ed,
Wow.
Ed Ford. And it turns out that Ed Randall was living in an apartment that had a second bedroom. And Ed Ford needed a place to stay. So Ed Randall offered it to Ed Ford.
Wow.
So at that point, the two Eds got together and became lifelong friends. And he says to this day, they don't call themselves Ed, they call themselves Rumi. So, but one time Ed was going to the Old Timers game at Yankee Stadium, covering it for ESPN. And Whitey Ford sees Ed, and he puts his arm around him and takes him around and introduces him to everybody who was playing that day. Mantle, Maris, everybody, Yogi, everybody that was going to play in the Old Timers game. So,
wow.
Whitey Ford.
It's a big thing. I mean, my father loves the Old Timers games, obviously. I mean, I don't think he's been around the last couple of years. I know they introduce him somewhat, like, and he goes around in the cart and stuff,
Right,
but I don't think I've seen him in the last couple of years. But he's got to be in his late 80s at this point now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, my Whitey Ford is to my dad like Springsteen is to me. So.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And how do you like the new stadium?
I actually like it, but I've said this before, and I'm going to be honest about it. Being both to Yankee Stadium and Citi Field, objectively, I happen to like Citi Field better. I think it's more fan friendly. With the Yankee Stadium, I just feel like the way it was. I like the old Yankee Stadium a lot better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like the old Yankee Stadium. I think this one is not as fan friendly. I think Shea or City Field is just wherever you went, even if you stayed, you were by the bar, and a lot of people do that. A lot of people, they just buy the ticket for the bar, and you could really see everything. I mean, basically see everything. So, I would have to say if I preferred one or the other, it'd be City Field. I remember one of my cousins. Well, it's one of my cousins. They took me on a tour of Fenway, and I knew I was going, but it was like private thing. He got me and whatever, and then I didn't tell him this, but the mascot, so the mascot came to take a pic. I wanted to take a picture with the mascot.
Sure, yeah.
But he didn't know. When we went to take the picture, I pulled my shirt off, and I had a Yankee shirt on. And my cousin was pissed off. Oh my God! And the mascot was trying to get away from me.
Right.
And we just snapped a quick picture, but he was not happy. But you get your Red Sox to the Yankees. You got to do it.
I preferred the old Yankee Stadium as well. In fact, I coached an all-star game, a collegiate all-star game at the old Yankee Stadium. I was in the bullpen. Most people didn't realize what was going on back there. Of course, it's right near the monuments. I got to see all the monuments. And secondly, back then there was an awning that guys could sit under to get out of the sun and the shade.
Yeah.
But underneath the awning, every Yankee reliever signed the awning. It was a metal awning. And you had every single reliever you ever could imagine from the Yankee bullpens.
Right.
Sparky Lyle, Goose Gossett, et cetera, et cetera. And when they tore down the old Yankee Stadium, the guy who took the awning was Derek Jeter.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He got the awning. Yep.
Wow.
I just felt that the new stadium seems like a shopping mall.
Yeah, it didn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to me.
I haven't been to Citi Field yet, so I couldn't tell you. I have to admit that I was a midget Met way back when, because the Little League teams, they took you to the ballparks. In fact, when I first started playing, the Mets were at the Polo Grounds. So we had actually seen what the Polo Grounds looked like. And then we went to Shea when it opened up. And they must have given us the highest seats you could ever imagine. we were like in another world. In fact, I think we were closer to the jets flying overhead than they were to the field.
Right.
And we had those big panels.
Yeah,
We were
yeah,
so high we could touch the panels.
yeah. I was actually, I mean, I'm actually surprised that I know Bruce did a nice 3-night run in Shea
Right.
at the time, but I'm surprised that Bruce has never done being a Yankee fan hasn't done one in Yankee Stadium.
That's amazing. Yeah, right, exactly. Well, Howie, we're running out of time, and unfortunately, it's been great catching up.
It's been a pleasure. It's great seeing you again, Lee.
Thanks to Howie Chaz, the warden of the Spring Nuts Facebook group. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Take care.